Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, hey, folks, hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. In this video, folks, we're going to talk a little bit about the Hall of Mirrors and how it relates to kind of the group think concept of group think, right? I did a video quite some time ago, a little bit on group think. I think it was more discussed within the video than it was a topic, but today we're going to talk a little bit about that Hall of Mirrors and the group think mentality, right? Now, as we often do, we talk about organizational culture because that's where we come together as, teams, typically where we form up as teams on a daily basis to serve a common goal, usually to serve customers, right? And because of that, everything we do is connected. It doesn't matter if it's where you work, where you live, your friends, your clubs, your churches, all the groups, right? Culturally, everything is connected. So take what works for you and apply it thoughtfully, right? For the positive betterment of your own life and the lives of those that you come in contact with every day. And on that note, let's talk a little bit about the Hall of Mirrors. Okay. First of all, just to touch a little quick, briefly, because it kind of relates, is if you've ever heard about the whole concept of shadow work. It's a Jungian thing to pronounce it correctly. Okay. But it really, if I was to simplify it down, it's really about going back and deconstructing. It's really like auditing your own life. Okay. And through that audit, you start to figure out how some things, and whether it be things you've done or things that influenced you through all of your life's development, may have conditioned you down a path that didn't really help you, whether it be others' addictions and codependencies or your own and so on and so forth, right? And all of life's things, right? So when individuals do their own shadow work, they're going in, they're essentially doing a life audit, right? And in the course of doing that life audit, some of the stuff can be a little bit like, oh my gosh, right? There can be epiphanies. And some of those epiphanies may be sour. They may make you feel bad. But keep in mind, folks, there's no such thing as a perfectly lived life on this planet, okay? What it is we've all got something that has affected us. The key thing about it, though, is this. Once we establish the audit findings, if you want to put it that way, right? Being very sterile about it today. If you want to use the audit findings, use them in a constructive way to make yourself better, more helpful. I should say, use that to inspire others, to encourage others. Maybe you help others from going down a path you went down, right? So maybe people don't completely avoid toxicity, but maybe they reduce the level of toxicity in their lives and so on and so forth, right? So that's kind of a general thing about shadow work. And I'm only telling you and just kind of doing a quick snapshot on that because a similar paradigm occurs with an individual as it does an organization, right? We're humans, and within us, we've got, bacteria and enzymes and cells, and we've got, colonies. The amount of life that is within us is ridiculous. So an organization, much the same way, right? Culture, much the same way. Now how did the Hall of Mirrors fit into this? Well, so there's a couple things happening now. Now, if you imagine the desert, and we'll say that on one side of this desert, we're splitting our desert in half with a Hall of Mirrors, okay? Dividing it. On the one side, there's the Hall of Mirrors and the circus, we'll say, or the fairgrounds, whatever, right? And on the other side, potential better, brighter future, okay? But on the side that the fairgrounds are on, this is where most of us reside. And our dopamine gets hit because, there's a Ferris wheel over there, and there's this, and there's that, and we're just consumed with all kinds of distractions and entertainment and all the things, right? And conflict too, right? And then there's the Hall of Mirrors. Now, the Hall of Mirrors is kind of spooky to people. Why is it? Well, typically you feel like you're in there as an individual, you're going through that, and you see yourself, right? And that Hall of Mirrors, that can be that can be a little bit ominous because it's you everywhere you go, right? For the most part, it's you everywhere you go. And you're trying to find your way through this hall of mirrors. Now, that as an individual definitely would serve to kind of give another example of doing that shadow work. To do that shadow work means you're going to have to look at yourself. You can say look in the mirror, but I would say it's more like going through a hall of mirrors because there's many facets of you throughout the entirety of your life. And all those facets have served to kind of shape and mold you, and you've made decisions, and comfortable ones, risky ones, and otherwise, and safe ones, right? But sometimes when we make decisions, we feel like we're progressing in life if we make very calculated and safe decisions, right? But the reality is that those decisions keep us preoccupied in the fairgrounds, right? And this is where most of culture, as we progress, most culture resides on this side. Most in culture and groups, right? Organizations and otherwise, they're afraid to go through the hall of mirrors. And why is that? Because, like I said earlier, as an individual goes through, they have to kind of deconstruct, right? Do an audit, which is kind of a deconstruction, right? And then kind of reassemble, hopefully to make your car faster and stronger. Well, whatever, have a little fun there, right? So there's this whole deconstruction aspect to it. But organizations, teams, cultures, they're afraid to go through this. Why? Because for them to go through as a team, to go, oh my gosh, we're going to see all of our, ugly selves and how we haven't done well and haven't performed. We haven't taken care of our teams. We haven't done our due diligence, to follow, good leadership guides. We've fallen short in so many areas, right? Well, got news for you, folks. That's everybody. Okay. But just the same, this is where the groupthink aspect of this comes in, because the resistance now is to what? Going through the hall of mirrors, okay? Because why? We don't want to look at the reality. The difficulty there is that what happens is individually or as an organization, our performance never really improves beyond a certain threshold. Now, my theory, this is just my theory, this part significantly from my experience, is that if you take the Fibonacci number, right, the ratio, and you chop it where it needs to go, you're probably not going to exceed a truly 61% effectiveness, truly efficiency effectiveness, right? Without going through that hall of mirrors, which means doing a certain level of deconstruction to then what? Not unlike when the samurai that used to make the swords, they go through the whole process of forging that steel, right? It's a cooling, it's a heating, a breaking, a cooling, and then a repeating of the process, right? That's a transformation. And that's what continuous improvement is. It's constantly doing that. And then over the course of doing that, and I know I'm leaving out a step or two in there, but going through that process, it's making that sword super strong, so strong and sharp, but super strong, right? And this is essentially what is required of us as individuals, but also, just through a normal progression of life. And as organizations, cultures, teams, clubs, pick a group, insert here, okay? And if you don't do that, then you don't get sharper, right? You don't get stronger, you don't get sharper. You'll actually be more dull, right? You're weaker, right? You can break more easily. Now you see where organizations fail, people struggle and are set back. And this goes on oftentimes until it's too much, until they realize we have to go through this hall of mirrors if we're going to progress forward. And then this is where you see the decision made by any site or broader organization to embark on improvement programs within, and then of course, to have it facilitated on the outside, as well, all kinds of aspects of this. But you have to make that, that has to be a decision, a thoughtful decision to do that. And it can't be a half in, half out, right? We're not half in the pool and half out of the pool. We're either all in the pool or we're all out of the pool, right? We're either all just eating cotton candy, right? Believing our own groupthink, right? And that's the other thing about groupthink. The group then, right? We settle to the lowest common denominator. Now, am I talking about a person? No, I'm talking about our behavior. I just want my dopamine hits. I just want to do the simplest thing, do my job, and go home. I don't want any complexity. I don't want to have to think more than I already think, right? It's that mindset of complacency, essentially, right? Now, you might think, well, I'm doing my job. I'm not complacent. Yeah, but does your own life beyond work improve? That would be fair. That would be a fair answer or a fair, equation if you say, nope, absolutely not. So. And the other part of this too is that because of this groupthink, people then they start to gaslight what? Those who do want to go through the hall of mirrors. So you may have a percentage of your team, right? Just like you have a percentage of your family, or your friend group, or your community, and your all these things that want to go through the hall of mirrors because they know that change has to happen if we're to elevate beyond the muck and where we're at now. Okay. And you can apply this to everyday culture right now, right? And say and see where people will gaslight, right? Then that's where the groupthink also comes in. The group then will gaslight the outliers, those people who are saying, "Hey, no, we can't go this way," right? They'll gaslight them, right, and to shut them up, to go along, to play go along or get along, and then essentially it can hold, through social mechanisms that I'm not going to get into in this video, but through social engineering to some level, social mechanisms, right? The group essentially will what? Gang up. And then if the resistance is difficult for the individual is unable to break out, then they're stuck. And that's also a crabs in the bucket scenario too, right? So what you have to realize is that the group, I mean, heck, that's a desert over there, right? You got the fairgrounds, but it's in this desert motif that I've laid out. They would much rather take whipped topping and put it over the dirt and eat it and tell themselves that they're eating, a topped brownie versus eating dirt with, topping on it. Okay. The group think will be so insidious that they will gaslight even the most mundane things, right? And those who would even think to question whether or not they're actually performing well individually or as a group, right? So it's the status quo. That is essentially the status quo. The fairgrounds is the status quo. But we think because there's drama, because there's toxicity, there's drama, there's all this colorful, we'll call it, stuff going on, that, oh my gosh, this provides me so much color to my life, and it's nuanced, and there's culture, and we have a variation of ideas, and there is good in some of that for sure, right? We do want different ideas. We do want to have good energy. We do want to bring, positive outlook on things. Absolutely. But underlying, we have to ask ourselves, are we doing some of these things to gaslight ourselves into thinking that we're doing pretty good? You could have your team come in and say, yeah, we're doing really good, and da-da-da. And you could have a site leader looking at the performance, key performance indicators going, no, right? But the whole team can gaslight itself into thinking it's going well. You could have middle management running around gaslighting the heck out of the whole team thinking, oh, they're doing fantastic. But they're not really looking at the performance ultimately, right? So this is the thing you have to realize is that there's a latent fear by the group. And that fear is met with gaslighting. And that gaslighting prevents what? Change from really occurring. You might have, the team going, oh, we're going to do a little bit of this. We're going to do a little bit of that. We're going to move the popcorn stand over here, and we're going to move the flying monkey thing over here. We're going to move this over there and the trampoline, whatever. You're going to move all the things around, right? We're going to reorganize the thing. We're going to put that whipped topping over the dirt and call it a brownie, right? And we're going to do all these things, and this is good. We're doing good. We're change. That's not change, folks. That's not transformation. Transformation, part of the process, folks. And this has got to be a sobering thought, individually and as any team. I don't care if you're 2 people or 200,000. Okay, is You have got to go through that hall of mirrors and call, and this is the key. This isn't calling out your peers and calling out, the new people and calling out just leaders. Everybody has to own it. Everybody has to own where they didn't, step up to the plate. Everybody has to take accountability. Everybody has to do that. We're talking about an organization. Just as an individual, for true transformation to take hold, they have to take accountability for all of their part, right? That doesn't mean you got to run around and put it on the evening news and all that kind of stuff. No, but unless you're, a public entity, like the government, right? Then it's better when you do that, right? So, because you're demonstrating to the people who you work for, all of the people within your culture, right? You're demonstrating to them that you're actually, doing things to advance, good progressive, good change, right? Making progress, right? So you do want to do that, but it doesn't mean, as an individual, you're not expecting you to run around town and tell people all your dirty laundry. That's not what it is. But individually, if you think about that, and you can think about it as an individual, and then it's easier to digest it as a group. As an individual, there's nobody else. You're not going to make others accountable for your actions. If you made that left turn or that right turn, or you went up the high road or down the low road, you did that. Nobody made you do that, right? And because of that, you have to own your part. And when you own your part, then you can heal from that, whatever that was, right? You heal from it, and it might take many years or decades, right? It just depends on how, because there are bona fide traumas within all of this too, right? And this is why counselors and medical professionals exist. So you can go to them so that you can sit down and air it all out. It does help that process, right? For people doing their shadow work, right? And get into the roots of things. And it makes, your progression better. And you become a more helpful, a more useful and helpful person toward other people going through the similar things, right? But you're going through this hall of mirrors. Now, teams that do this, right? Entities that do this, right? Organizations, government, it could be state, local, federal, it doesn't matter, who are willing to go through the hall of mirrors and not blame others, but blame the entire, situation, right? And I'll tell you another reason why a lot of people won't do this or are apprehensive to do it. Look, folks, nobody wants to be thought of as a coward. Oh, I should have stepped up and said something. Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. Folks, that's every human. Every human's dropped the ball. Every human, and history is littered with this, is where we failed ourselves as individuals and we failed others. That is just a fact of life. But what did we learn from that failure? Did we take the lesson and say, not again, right? We're not going to fail like that again. We're not going to throw anybody under the bus for the group, right? We're not going to gaslight individuals. Because right now, when you think about it, this is where a lot of people have rebelled, right? Or I should say, who are gaslit into being the rebel. You have the rebel of the family, rebel of the friends, rebel within the local community and the culture, and right? And sure, there might be the worst version of that who are trying to actually do harm, not good. Don't do that, okay? But for those who are trying to be, productive humans, even those folks are gaslit, right? As the rebel, right? When they're not the rebel, they're being the maverick, right? And the maverick has to step out and take charge, right? And do the thing. But here's the kicker about this situation. Sometimes, and this is a spark of hope here for you. Sometimes when one or a few of you start to go toward that hall of mirrors, saying, you know what, this is better over here. Example I'll use is the Jerry Maguire movie from way back. Now I can say way back. But he leaves with he's got his fish in his fishbowl or whatever, right? I think that's what it was. And he's like, who's coming with me? And everybody's like, see ya. We have a job. We don't want to lose our job, all the things, right? And he goes, come on, we're going to start a new thing. And then she ends up following him to go start their own thing. And of course, that's a slow ebbing, and you see that journey. That's a good example of somebody going, nope, I'm going through the hall of mirrors, right? This is not acceptable, going through this hall of mirrors. And when you do that, it's not going to be a clean success. Remember that whole thing with the sword, the breaking, right? And the whole process to make it stronger. It's a process, folks. It's not a one time, oh, I'm going to do something different now. And oh, this is fantastic. No, it's a process. And during that process, yes, you're going to have people going, what are you doing over there with that sword? Heating it up, breaking it, cooling it, doing all the things, right? What are you doing? That's just stupid. That's silly. Why are you doing that? Until that sword's done. And when that sword's done, it doesn't matter who's wielding that sword. You're not going to get past that person, okay? Because that sword's going to be so sharp and so strong that that person could walk off and start their own village, right? Start their own organization, start their own culture, their own country, their own whatever. Why? Because now you've gone through the steps. You've faced the hall of mirrors. You've gone through that process to forge, anew, to begin the process, to go through that long, enduring process. And when you come out the other side of that hall of mirrors, you step out into a world that you didn't even know existed. You step out into a freedom and into a productivity and into an ease and into a collaborative and innovative environment, amongst your entire team, especially if the whole team goes through it, right? And you might lose a few going through the hall of mirrors. There are going to be a few that, leave your organization. Like, I'm going to go work for this company because they're satisfied to do the bare minimums every day, or not change. I just want to come in, water the plants, and go home, whatever. And so this is the example, folks. If you want to achieve results, right? I think it's an Einstein quote. If you want, results you've never had, you have to do something you've never done, right? It's not a perfect quote, but you get the idea. And that's it. It's the hall of mirrors, folks. And going through that hall of mirrors, you're going to see things in those mirrors. You're going to see things, each other's team members. You're going to, of yourself. And during that process of going through that hall of mirrors, you have to own it. You have to own it with humility and go, okay. Now, if you're a person of faith, as I am, then you have some escorts, okay, to help you through that. So there is that. But you also have people who have gone through this process, right? If we're talking about practical work-related stuff, okay? And this is where some, like myself and some others, we've gone through this and we understand the deeper philosophy underlying change and transformation. There are plenty of people who come at you with I have a sheet, do these things. Okay, here you go, bye. And I'm out the door. And then 30, 60 days later, your team's further behind than they were when they started out. They're more lost now, right? So it's important that you have good guidance going through this process. So on that note, hope you're all having a fantastic day. Let's close out. Remember, hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day or more to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When you do this, not only are you helping to transform culture, but you're transforming your own life. But don't forget, you can't transform anything on the outside if we're not willing to transform on the inside. So important. All right, folks, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.